All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistolka, and with me today, I've got Paul Van Metre from Bellingham, Washington. We're going to talk today a little bit about his transition from being a successful machine shop owner to now he's an ERP software system owner, business owner, and helps people with that. So, Paul, awesome to have you here today.
Thank you, Damon. I'm really looking forward to it. Your energy and infectious for this is just, yeah, it's infectious. I'm looking forward to chatting today.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. I get excited about manufacturing, man. I tell you, from the first time I stepped foot into a plant, I knew that's where I wanted to be.
I can tell talking just before we hit go, talking shop and talking, yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah,
For
it's
sure.
fun. It's fun stuff, and I think you got a cool story, man. Just because of the fact that you you came out to the West Coast to go to college. You met some people in college. You started a business, and that turned into one thing turned into another. So, really great. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about the background and kind of what led you to where you're at today, or at least through part of that, and we'll ask some more questions.
Sure. Yeah. So I was, as we also talked about before we go, I was actually studying engineering in Boston, and it was kind of dry, didn't love it. And then I read about this very hands-on automotive program in Washington, and I told my mom, I said, that's where I'm moving. I'm transferring over to Washington. And so I went there. Very first class that I took, I met my business partner, Kelsey. We were tearing apart motorcycle engines and rebuilding them and getting them to run again. And just fell in love with working hands-on. Built that program also had a full-on machine shop in it. So we got to design and build race car parts for all these college competitions, and just really just loved working together, loved making stuff, and decided to start a shop right out of college.
Wow.
So another partner, actually Kelsey's older brother, was also taking classes, and he took out a second mortgage on his house, and that's the money we used to buy a Haas VF4 and a manual mill and lathe, and started knocking on doors looking for work. So we
All
were
right.
we were pretty dumb. We didn't know much about business, that's for sure. But it worked out all right.
Yeah. Well, that's cool because you listen to so many people that start businesses, and it is the desire to do something, and that desire overwhelms your sometimes, and I'm not using the right words, but your notion that I shouldn't be doing this for a lot of
Your common sense.
yeah, common sense or practical reasons why I shouldn't do it, but knowing that you're going to succeed, or you're gonna die trying,
Yeah.
and just the belief that you can do it. I
Yeah,
think that's
we had some people say, you should go into work in industry for a few years and then start a business. And we're like, no, we're just going to go for it right now.
yeah,
There's nothing to lose, except maybe his house. But
yeah,
he was brave.
yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Fun.
So you guys were in that for quite a while then.
We had that shop for 17 years in total. Yeah,
Wow.
before we sold it.
So 17 years. Now
Yep.
the changes from beginning to end had to be massive.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, we started with one machine and just a handful of us. And then, yeah, by the time we finished, we had, I think, over 30 CNCs and about 75 people running 3 shifts and doing not only machining work, but we were also AS9100 for engineering and design work. So we did a lot of design engineering
Wow.
projects for some of the primes. We made cool machines and mechanisms and fixtures for Northrop Grumman, and lots of fun stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So were you guys doing a fair amount of just design kind of stuff for the aerospace, or were you doing limited production stuff too, or
So we were pretty diversified. I mean, we were probably about 60-70% aerospace, but a
okay.
wide range of clients. But I'd say our, revenue wise, our biggest was our production machining.
Yep.
But then we had a totally separate value stream, dedicated prototyping department, quick turn, different people, different machines,
Yep.
just doing quick turn one-off jobs. And then we had our design engineering team, small team, 2 or 3 designers and people doing assembly work and building all that stuff,
Yeah.
which fed into production and prototype machining as well, of course, to support that.
Were there any specific areas, like, part of a piece of equipment or part of a plane or?
Yeah, we mostly worked on the Joint Strike Fighter, the
Right.
F-35, supporting Northrop and Palmdale, California.
Yeah.
And we made 3 different major kind of assembly designs. One was a big mechanism that took a piece of tooling and placed it up into the airplane partway along the line. So it had electric motors, and it was all a big weldment, and it had this mechanical kind of path that it would feed up in there. We made a pretty cool, like really fancy bandsaw that was using a reciprocating carbon or diamond coated blade that would actually cut the leading edge out of a damaged wing. So if it had like a bird strike or something that damaged the honeycomb core, we'd cut out a section of that, and then they'd replace it. And then the one that was like sort of the biggest program that turned into actually, and is still ongoing with the company we sold, is a jig to hold the intake duct of the engine, or the frame that leads in the engine, holding that round as it's transported from California to Texas.
Yeah.
So they've made dozens of those that are just rotating tools that they put them in there, because they found when they were shipping them to Texas, they would end up coming out of round, so they wouldn't all fit together nicely with the engines. So we designed this pretty neat mechanism that had cams and it would insert, and then they'd lock it into place, and then they'd ship it on a truck, and it would end up round when they arrived there. So anyway, that's just fun, going down on the production line and talking to engineers and people on the line, and it was really fun.
Well, and people, if you're not in manufacturing, and specifically in machining, and like you were doing in the design work there, you don't realize how much of that type of equipment there is for a given plane or a given. There is so much of it. I mean, one of the companies that I had run a while ago now, I mean, like we did and this was a couple companies before I was done. We actually made the tooling that did the first carbon fiber ribs in the 787. So it was cool. They were big, like, I don't know, 7-8 feet, circular things, 5-axis. They were welded plate and into their tooling size, and then 5-axis surface machined, and they all had to be vacuum, hold vacuum and stuff.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. And then we did some of the wing strut work for it, or not the wing, but the motor mount, the big aluminum motor mounts for them. And it's just so interesting when you look at what goes into those kind of things and those programs. And really, like you're saying, that motor, the motor nacelle or whatever it was that you were keeping straight.
Yeah.
It's amazing the amount of effort that goes into something like that, just that one piece, keeping it good, because it probably started as a solid billet of aluminum, or if it was carbon fiber or whatever it was a lot of care went into making it, and not having to touch it at all and just slide it right onto the plane is very important.
Oh yeah. And it had to be inspected with lasers and make sure it's perfect. And and that's what's so fun about manufacturing. You're just solving these real world problems, being creative, coming up with solutions, and then making them happen.
That's for sure. And you still get to mess with that too, and we'll get into that a little bit. So I saw a couple interesting things in your background, though. It said that you did a little machining for a place called Madison Motorcycle. Now, what kind of stuff were you doing there? Was this? I mean, it was in the time of the custom motorcycle era when you were doing this. So that's why
that was actually that was a father and son sort of family run business down on Whidbey Island. And we met them because the son came up and did some kind of coaching on machining because he was a really, really incredible machinist and programmer. But now they had, they actually did a lot of weird things. They did make motorcycle, like really kind of custom motorcycle stuff, single-sided front swing arms and stuff,
Yeah.
even before anyone else was doing that. But they kind of made the bulk of their money. I wouldn't say those were money-making projects, but the main thing they did was they got tied in with Cannondale, the bike company, and made thousands and thousands of crank arms and really cool billet machined parts for Cannondale bikes.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was quite a learning experience.
Yep.
That
is cool.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah. I had an opportunity. I had a friend of mine that was a general manager at one of the motorcycle shops in that time frame, that they were making air suspension systems and they made high-end custom motorcycles too. And that I saw that, I thought that was pretty interesting because go ahead.
I'm sorry. They even made their own engines. And imagine this is actually, it was a modular V engine design. Could be a V twin, V4, V6, or V8. Now the 8 cylinders were used in airplanes. Crazy. And these were massive volume, really low RPM, like 2000 RPM, 800 cubic inch engines.
Oh,
and
the
airplane version. And these were totally billet machined and programmed via 100% G code way back in the day before they had
CAM. My goodness.
It was unbelievable. It's one of the most complex parts I've ever seen, and it was all hand G coded.
Wow.
The guy was a genius.
For those of the people that are listening that don't know machining, that's like, making windows, with a typewriter. Right. I don't know how to explain it, but that's not something that you normally would just step out and do. But it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, like you said, machining is machining, manufacturing in general, the problem solving that goes into it is so unique, and it's so challenging. And I think that's why a lot of people get into it. And one of the things that I always like to talk about when I'm talking about manufacturing in general is, I hope that a couple kids that are in high school hear us talking today and something interests them about it, because there are so many kids that graduate from high school that may not want to go to a 4-year degree, get a 4-year degree, may not even want to go to a vocational school. But I always like to let those kids know that, man, manufacturing is a good place to work. Find work in manufacturers, and the manufacturers need people that can come with their minds, their hands, and their skills, and they can build some of the coolest stuff they're ever going to be able to see if they do that. Yeah,
and you're right. Those manufacturers need them badly.
Yes.
There's such high demand for people that want to get into this trade.
Yes. And it's too bad that I think there's some places where they do a much better job than others, but I always like to mention it because I saw a lot of my son's friends that, that they didn't want to go to college, and that's cool. And they didn't want to go to vocational school. That's cool. And you see them taking some jobs that you go, listen, I mean, manufacturing jobs are not low paying jobs.
No, not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. I mean, so it's something where, and it's typically you're not outside like in a construction environment, and the hours are steady and plentiful usually. So yeah. But it's good.
We're really fortunate to work with a couple of school programs. In fact, we just published a video for the first time today online with it's a high school machine shop program. It's a business run by the students. It's a machine shop business. Wow. And we donated ProShop to them, and they're coming out of that program with programming and machining skills. And I even had another customer that's in the same geographic area reach out and say, hey, I just learned about this and I want to recruit those students. So can you connect me with the advisor?
Yeah. So well, and that's awesome. That's honestly those kids that have just a little starter skill like that, they can go walk right in. And people will welcome them with open arms.
Absolutely.
They need it. That's awesome. So where is that at?
That's in near Indianapolis. So the school is Brown County High School. The program is called Eagle Manufacturing, and we can share actually I could share the link. If I share a link on this, will it go out on LinkedIn?
It won't, but I
you
will
can
put
do
it
that?
out on, I can do it. I can do it. So you share it
Okay.
in here, it'll hit Facebook and I'll take it and move it into LinkedIn. But yeah, it's so cool when I hear of programs like that, because it's just more needed. It's needed so badly. And the manufacturers, like you said, are so looking like, Matt Goosey, a guy
Yep.
in Wisconsin.
MRS. Yep.
Yeah, MRS. He said he had turned down $1 million worth of work a few weeks ago because he didn't have people. He can't hire people. It's like, what the heck? That's a lot of, that's a lot to not to be able to, it makes you sick. It just makes me sick.
Yeah.
So I'm
It's
going to
the
drop this
reality.
into LinkedIn.
Yep.
There we go. I dropped the link on LinkedIn there. So if you want to see the Brown County High School machining program, that'll be right in there.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
good. Well, Paul, so you guys have your machine shop. You get to a certain point and you go, whatever possessed you to go, let's write our own ERP system?
Yeah, so that certainly was not ever our intentions.
Yeah,
So
it's like,
when we, so keep in mind, when we started our shop straight out of college, like the only jobs we'd ever have was like delivering pizza, right? We didn't know we didn't know anything. We certainly didn't know what ERP software was. So we just started using, QuickBooks and Excel spreadsheets, right? So we had, and my partner Kelsey, pretty good with Visual Basic, and he made some pretty fancy macros, and we would spawn worksheets and workbooks and clone them and make work orders. And so as we were doing that, we started, and we wanted to be paperless from day one in our shop. So we had CRT monitors out at the machines, with a computer connected there, and we would pull up our spreadsheets and do our work. But we really focused, as a shop, what mattered, probably more than anything to us was execution on the shop floor, right? Getting our setups to go fast and smooth, making good quality parts, and making sure, everything was within tolerance, keeping organized, and making sure we just had good systems and processes to make the shop floor efficient. So we built all sorts of spreadsheets that did things like manage our cutting tools and do our first article and in-process inspection plans and execute those. And we even had sheets with all of our work instructions and our XY zeros and G54s and all those things. And so when about 3 years later, we had about a dozen employees, and we were growing pretty quickly. And Excel was just not going to scale with us. It was just becoming too cumbersome. So we started doing research for Shop ERP. And as we started getting sales demos and talking to these companies, we'd be like, okay, show us how you do all these things that we do on spreadsheets. And they were like, no, we don't do any of those things. That we don't really do the shop floor. Like, we do the office, and we can do your accounting and purchasing, but it's kind of up to you. We can print off a paper traveler, and then from that you can log in or do whatever. But anyway, so we were just really disappointed, actually, that none of them were doing the kind of things that we were doing and we needed to do to keep our shop efficient. So we just decided, rather than still have lots of spreadsheets plus their software, we would just find a developer and just build something for ourselves. And so we found this guy named Matt, who was a friend of my partner's, and we hired him to basically write what we wanted it to look like, and didn't intend to sell it to anyone, for sure. It was just strictly an in-house tool. And but we just developed it over the years. About 4 years later, we went for ISO certification, and so we built all the QMS modules. 2 years after that, we got AS9100, and we built more QMS modules and more features to help pass the AS9100 certification, and just kept going like that, just building more stuff. And it wasn't until about 2008 that our biggest machine shop customer, who had seen ProShop many, many times, because one of their employees came and moonlighted on the weekends getting some extra work at our shop. He went back to the owners and he said, "You got to see the system they have." And then they approached us and asked us to sell it to them. And initially we said, no, we wasn't for sale. We're just a machine shop.
Yeah.
But we eventually gave it a shot, and the results they got just blew us all away. And that's really when the light bulb went off that this is probably more important than making parts.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, your approach though, because you, rather than like virtually all the other systems who started off in accounting and they got into the manufacturing because they knew they had to be able to sell the manufacturers and kind of cobble that together. You started in manufacturing where you really can help to make money for a business.
That's where a business makes money, is on the floor.
Exactly.
In a shop, at least.
Exactly. And worked your way back from the floor and organizing that and doing that, because the things like you're saying with the QMS, and you were talking about all of the storing the first article data and storing the in-process data and just having it there at the machine and having it easy to input, or in a quality department, or wherever the heck they need to be putting it in, or direct interface too. I'm sure that you guys are now interfacing with digital equipment and stuff like that too, correct?
Yeah, if you're measuring with an SPC caliper or mic, you can hit the button and it'll feed the result right into ProShop, and it'll instantly validate it and tell you whether that's a good result or not. And if it's not, it'll say, hey, do you want to make an NCR? And it makes the NCR, and then it alerts the QA department that an NCR was just made. And and we were doing that, back in 2004.
My goodness. That is crazy cool, because, I personally was in businesses where I spent, $200,000 to $500,000 putting equipment and ERP systems in, and they could do none of that.
Right.
They could do none of that. And like
we were really lucky that this guy, Matt, that we hired, who was a web developer to begin with. So we were web-based from day one back in 2000, when that was pretty early days for web applications. And he was just really, really good. And then, and then we had our whole team telling him what they wanted it to do, because they were using it all day, every day.
Yeah.
So it was just a really good closed loop to
you had your own testing,
rapidly iterate.
Rapidly make changes, see how it worked, and get it going. So now as you go forward and you see this and you see the application, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see as machine shop owners are coming into today's environment? What are some of their biggest challenges that they're seeing in general, and then you're seeing that the ERP system really helps them with?
You mean new shop owners, or
just shop owners, just existing shop owners in itself? I mean, what are some of the industry challenges right now out there? I mean, we went through COVID, and I don't think a lot of machining shops are really horribly affected by that. But what are the things that are hitting?
The ones that were doing commercial aerospace were definitely affected pretty bad.
Yeah,
and those that were in the Boeing ecosystem with the 737 grounding were already having a tough time.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was pretty tough on some of them. But so I mean, for some it's keeping busy, diversified sales. See a lot of shops that just have like an incredibly high, like, one of our customers is 85% of our business. I'm like, oh, that's a dangerous place to be. But I'd say in bigger picture, obviously finding employees is really hard. Like you were talking about Matt from MRS, turning away work because you just don't have enough capacity. Cybersecurity is becoming more and more crucial, especially those shops in the defense business.
Yeah.
There's the new CMMC standard that's coming down the pipeline hard and fast.
Yep.
That will require third-party certification for their cybersecurity maturity. And then there's also a lot of, kind of in what you do, there's a lot of shop owners that are getting on towards retirement and thinking about what they want to do with their business next, either passing it to their kids or selling it altogether, or to their employees. And I think a lot of them, and you and I have talked about this a little before, a lot of them are going to be in for a rude surprise about their business isn't worth as much as they think it should be, partly because of the lack of systems they've not built in their company.
Well, you had mentioned this before, when we were talking about how a good ERP system and yours extends past that into the QMS and the things beyond that. I mean, it provides that scalable backbone for your shop floor and for your business overall. And that's one of the things that, as we were kind of giggling about using spreadsheets for the travelers, that's really not a scalable thing, because that means that, if the paper gets lost or someone it's just, there's too many variables in there for that thing to scale like it needs to. And then when you take that, it can work perfectly fine today, right? But when a buyer looks at that, they're looking at scalability, they're looking at future value, they're looking at how this is going to look in 10 years, not is it going to get me through the next couple of years that so I can get out. Sure. And it's a huge differential in A, sellability, and B, value when you look at it from that standpoint, having that solid infrastructure in place.
And if you don't have it, it kind of limits your options to people that want to be owner operators themselves. They want to take over your job as the owner. Yes. And as you have those great systems, the team that's executing it that doesn't rely on the owner, then you open up to a whole different type of buyer, that might just want to buy it for strategic reasons and know that the team can execute.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest things as you look in a more technical business, like a machining business. If the owner is the brain power behind the business, when that owner leaves, the value and the brain power behind the business just walked out the door.
Yes.
And it's a real thing, right? It's a real
it's thing. Totally real.
I talked to, it was a couple years ago now, I talked to a large Midwestern machining company. They were aerospace machining. Nice size. I mean, well into 8 digits. And they were doing, I shouldn't say not. Yeah. They were over $20 million. I just make sure I'm doing it right there. But, and they were really disappointed in the values they were getting from private equity buyers. There were 4 owners in the business. One was like the operations genius. One was the CEO. One was the supply genius. And one was the financial person. And they all expected to retire when the business was sold.
Right.
It's like, if that wouldn't be that's a risky proposition right there. When
for any buyer, sure.
Yeah. You just can't do it at that point. So what you're saying and allowing the owner to walk away from the business and the business still run fine for an extended amount of time is very valuable to the new buyers coming in.
Well, that's kind of the telltale. If the owner can go on vacation for a whole month and just disconnect and the business runs fine, that's a really good sign that your business will be worth more than if they start calling you the moment you walk out the door asking questions.
That definitely is. And real quick, we got Jenny Steffenmeyer, here. Jenny's got a cool welding shop in Iowa, solar powered, good stuff.
Yeah, I've talked to Jenny. She's awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, thanks for listening, Jenny. Glad to see you. And this is really interesting because you're out with ProShop now. You're selling ProShop to the machine shops. They've got these challenges they're working on. What are some of the things that your customers talk about after they've implemented your software? What really do they notice first? What do they go, wow?
Things just get a lot less frustrating and frantic. There's just way less firefighting.
Yeah.
And that turns into more throughput and more revenue. So the most common number that we hear, call it a year after they're, gone live and really are using a lot of the tools and features, the number we hear the most is about 25% increases in throughput. No additional people, no additional machines. Yeah. And which is a crazy number,
it is.
And it's awesome and it's amazing. But there's in a traditional shop, there are so many, I think so. And I've heard many people say it's the hardest kind of business in the world to run, right? There's so many moving parts. It's so complex. There's so technical. There's a million ways to get it wrong and only a couple of ways to get it right. and there's always these obstacles that cause long setup times and scrap rates and last minute firefighting where machines are down and you're scrambling to figure out, get the machine back up and running again. And with better processes and a little bit, not a lot more, but a little bit more forethought about being more system driven, it's amazing how much more velocity jobs can have. And so those are, I think, the specific tools that we provide that we haven't really seen many other systems out there do, that just allow just things to start moving much more smoothly through the facility.
Yeah.
And it impacts people on a personal level because they're less stressed, they're less frustrated, their businesses are now more profitable. They can hire more people if they want. They can go on vacation. I was just talking to a shop owner in Idaho who was getting to the point where he was feeling like it was just too stressful. He wanted to sell his shop. He switched over to ProShop, and then a year later, he's like, Paul, this has been the best year I've had ever. And I'm going hunting all the time, and I'm going golfing, and I know my shop's doing well because I can see it on my phone, and everyone knows what to do. And he's like, I don't want to sell it anymore. I want to just keep running it. I love it.
Yeah.
So.
And that is, I mean, what you touch on, and it's not necessarily to specifically talk about ProShop because ProShop's a great system. We know that, and it's really good. And I don't want to negate that. The thing you're touching on is they're in ProShop is a system that helps them run their business better. And it's not like an ERP system that of old that just spits out the financial data and your inventory and things like that. When you put in an operating system like ProShop that helps you run the business part of it, like you said, where you make your money, it gives you so much freedom, because that is the part that I always see in the clients that we help, that when we help them get control over the operations and they understand on a daily basis that I either did what I should have, or I've, in some cases, I've done enough to make sure I'm going to be profitable on that day or that week. And I know that if I do that through the month, I'm going to make money like I want at the end of the month. And that's really that's on the owner's mind.
Sure.
You're giving them that peace of mind because they can see if something's going awry rather than them not knowing, because oftentimes it's not just the business owner that doesn't know, it's the supervisor that doesn't know. And if the supervisor or the person doing it knows early enough, they'll take care of the problem.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. It really is an operating system. And it's, I mean, it's like upgrading, to Windows 10 when you used to run Windows 98, right?
Yeah.
There's just better features to make it faster, smoother. And it is remarkable the results that people can get when you have a good, and I really credit, quite honestly, I've already mentioned his name a couple of times, my partner Kelsey, and some of the other people we had on our team. They were just such brilliant sort of minds in execution and thinking about it strategically and from a business process perspective, and really also from a lean perspective. We went through a pretty major lean transformation pretty early in our business, probably also around 2004. And we built all sorts of tools and methods that were very much aligned with lean principles and eliminating waste and reducing WIP and all sorts of things that we just kind of built into the workflow of the software.
Yeah. And that like you're saying, if you did that and built it into the software, then it's part of the system and it automatically or systematically is part of the whole business then. Yep. That's really cool. So when you're out and about, and this is off the subject of ERP for a system, for a second, excuse me, what are some of the really cool things you see in manufacturing now? Because you get to visit a lot of different manufacturers, and I like that stuff, just seeing what's going on.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, robotics, super fun, super cool. 3D scanners, 3D printers. I mean, everything is going digital, and the way those systems all connect, and that's just super, super fun.
Yeah. So the robotics. I actually was talking to a friend of mine that's still he's a manager in a molding operation. Actually, one of them I used to work with, and they were talking about the robotics that they're using, and I forget the term he used, but it's actually a robot that's doing repetitive stuff around you, but it's like does something and hands you a part almost. And if you
sounds like a cobot.
Yeah, it is. It's a cobot. Exactly. That's what he said. And I'm like, that's cool as heck, because it's doing the hard stuff or it's doing the repetitive stuff or something where you've got to go into a piece of equipment. In that case, they were using it to take something out, and never really thought about that before, because the robotics of old that I was involved with was real, stay away, just let it do its job.
In the cage.
In the cage kind of thing. And the stuff will come out to you. But it's pretty cool that they're actually helping you do some of the manual processes now.
And they have sensors, so if you just touch it, it'll just kind of freeze there, and the torques aren't too crazy. It's like strong, but at the same time, it can, it's not going to break your arm if you touch it. So we have a client just here in town that they machine these parts, and then the robot dispenses glue on a thread, and then they thread it in, locked into us to clocking on this medical device for a knee replacement joint. And it's just incredibly repetitive process. The people that were doing it were getting carpal tunnel, and it's just it's just and it's not taking away a job. Because now the person is running the robot and they're getting more throughput and productivity, and it's safer for the people and more enjoyable. And so there's just so many benefits. It's really awesome.
And that's cool. Are there any new cutting things that are happening that's like you're seeing them speed up the cutting of aluminum or anything like this that's like crazy coming over the top?
There's definitely been lots of pretty major advancements in just cutting tool geometry and even how that relates to tool paths lately. So instead of these more kind of like high speed, shallow depth of cut milling paths that were popular for a while, now it's there's different terms for it, but like dynamic milling, where you're going like full depth, maybe a little less radial engagement. Although some of the new cutters just blow me away. They're taking like full slot width in titanium or steel or Inconel and just barreling through at speeds you'd never believe in your life, having seen it from 10 years before. I'll share you some links with you.
Oh, you have to, because that's what I asked that because when I was still running a place that we did a lot of titanium machining for the F-22,
right.
We would literally test cutters all the time, and you get a. I can still remember one day we had a big horizontal machine setting up on a forging, and we were testing some, what do they call them, corn cob cutters, and we were hogging out some spots in there. And this is a big machine. It's the size of a big truck. And the whole floor is shaking. You got 3 feet of concrete below you and everything's vibrating because it's like, whoa, you're doing that. So when you're talking about cutting like that, that's really something in titanium.
Maybe I can paste something over here right now. So there's this guy called Titan Gilroy who has this business, Titans of CNC, and he has a bunch of partners, including Kennametal, and they have this cutter called the Core 5, KOR5. And some of the cuts they're doing with it just are literally unbelievable. So I'll try to.
Well, and too, it's not only in those kind of situations where they're developing these new cutters, you have to convince, you have to do the testing and do that, but then you got to go into these machine shops and convince the programming people that you can actually program them to move that fast. Because I always want, programmers are, I in my experience anyway, are naturally conservative, so they're not going to want to push that in. And then you look at it, like the forgings I was talking, we were messing around with. I think those things were like $15,000 or $20,000 a piece. So you really don't want to wreck one.
Absolutely.
And in that case, I think they were like, that was over a year to wait for another one. So, but this is really something that as that, when you think about these technologies, they've been around for how long, and they continue to evolve.
Oh yeah. So much.
when you look at machining or manufacturing in general and you go, well, we've been doing, we've been making cars, or we've been cutting steel or cutting titanium for a long time, and you continue to see the developments, it really is exciting to be in an industry even that's been around for a long time.
But there's cutting edge stuff every day.
Every
people
day.
are working on every
day
day.
It's happening. Every day it's happening.
Yeah.
So how do you think the industry in general is keeping up with education? Because I got to believe that it's a challenge just to stay abreast of what's happening.
Yeah, well, there's these programs like the Eagle Manufacturing that I mentioned earlier, and there's community colleges and technical colleges all around the country.
Yeah.
And the companies in those areas that are engaging with those programs, as advisors or on the board of the program to, help them try the latest technologies, the latest software and tools and machines. And I think that's a key component to help these technical schools stay on the cutting edge. So the students coming out of them actually have, really great skills that are relevant. When we were involved with the community college here at our school, or in our town, and when we first, put 2 of our employees on the board, they were learning how to, hand grind high speed steel, right? And it's like, come on, guys, we need to let's get into the 20th century and 21st century here. And CAM programming and modern tool paths and skills that the machining companies really actually want to use. They don't need to know someone. They don't need to hire someone that knows how to grind high speed steel anymore, right?
That's
not what they're looking for. So
no.
Yeah, it's and there's lots of great programs that are now really modern and staying right on the cutting edge, and those students are coming out with great employability skills.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to just apologize to everyone out there that's in the aerospace industry, because I realized how big of a foot in my mouth when I said it really, the machining industry really wasn't affected that bad by COVID, because I had, the 737 being down, it was already down for a while ahead of that. And that decimated it. So I want to ask another question, follow up to that. From what you've seen in the aerospace industry, as the 737 coming back online, has that really started to propagate through the industry again and people are going, or is it slow going?
It's a slower ramp. Yeah. I mean, because the rates are not nearly as same as they were before. But yeah, I mean, customers are glad to get orders again and start making deliveries, Good. And the ones that I think survived that the best were the ones that got creative and diversified and were more sales driven, and it wasn't just aerospace. For example, we have a client who was traditionally pretty dominant in oil and gas, and they just didn't do a lot else other than that. And for a long, that industry was not doing terribly well, or has continued to not do super great. And this client of ours just decided, partly because they got ProShop, and they all of a sudden their QMS processes were just so get this, their QA manager freed up about half of his time every day.
Wow.
So he used to work 8 hours a day being a QA manager, and now he works 4, and he has 4 hours a day free. So they decided that he would pursue their AS9100. So they got AS9100. We even introduced them to a few key contacts and companies that are looking for suppliers, because we're now starting to get inquiries from people saying, hey, can you give me a list of companies that use ProShop? Because we've had such good success with those companies that we want more of them on our supply chain. So now they got AS9100. They got their first job from Lockheed, and they are now doing work for a space company. And it's just, in like 6 to 9 months, they've totally diversified, and it's so cool and awesome to see that. Be a part of that. So, but the key there is that they're just being really proactive and being aggressive to diversify, be sales driven, work on their processes, make their company more attractive as a supplier, get out, make those connections, make those introductions, and those opportunities will come.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so cool how your industry experience running the business allowed you to develop this solution that was really common sense, practical from the ground, from the floor up. So you're concentrating, as we talked about, the making money the best way you can first, and then moving beyond that, and how that's helping others now with this scalable system that they drop in and not drop in. It's a lot of work to put in and get it going right. But now once they have that in place, they can utilize that to further their business and move in different directions.
And there's no better, economic driver than supporting manufacturers like that, because, every manufacturing job creates multiple other jobs.
Yes.
That multiplier effect is greater than any other type of industry. And
definitely.
So yeah, it feels good to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you see on the horizon for you? I mean, you've got your business has been going great, and you got some new things coming out that you're going to be launching with your software. You got some new shows coming. What's going on?
I mean, I won't be satisfied until ProShop is an absolute household name in the machine shop business.
Nice. Yeah.
We're still getting there. There's lots of shops that haven't heard about us before.
Yeah.
But no, I think we're uniquely positioned to make a really positive impact on a lot of companies, and we've even had a lot of startup companies decide to get ProShop as one of the first things they buy. They buy their first CNC machine and they get ProShop.
Wow.
And they're just setting the stage for scalable growth and being attractive to clients. So yeah, we just want to keep and the more clients we get, the more developers we can hire, the more features we can build to make it even better. Right.
Yeah.
And we're constantly talking to clients about things they want. We probably have a feature wish list that's 1,000 features long, quite honestly.
Wow.
Just there's a lot of stuff we want to get into, and we're going to stay tight, into our niche. We're not going to get into warehouse management or retail sales or things like that. But for that core, complex manufacturing processes in a regulated industry like aerospace or medical or things of that sort, we just want to be the best out there.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Well, Paul, it's been awesome talking to you, man. And we could go down a lot of avenues in manufacturing.
We sure could.
I could spend many hours doing this, but I just so appreciate getting to talk to you and learn more about your history and how it's a fascinating story to me, because being in manufacturing for as long as I have, and helping as many manufacturers, I've never seen any of them that have taken the time to develop a system to run their company, and then that turn into an actual system that's helping others run their companies. And I think it's such a cool and a practical way to really developing something that's different and unique. So thank you so much.
Well, we didn't plan it, but yeah, we're having a really fun time. And thanks for allowing me to talk to your audience and be a part of this. It's
awesome.
Your enthusiasm is infectious, and I look forward to just working more with you, talking more with you.
Oh yeah, we will. We will definitely. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Paul?
Get a hold of me. I mean, certainly I'm pretty active on LinkedIn here, but just our website, ProShopERP.com.
Okay, that's where we have them go.
Or we have a very fun new website. You may have seen it, LoveYourERP.com.
Oh no, but I have to see it.
It's hot pink and hearts all over the website.
Oh, that's great.
Because we're poking fun at the fact that the word love and ERP just don't normally go together.
They've never been used in the same sentence.
Never, yeah. But we have so many clients say they love ProShop. So we have a mashup video of people saying that, and we launched it right on Valentine's Day. It was fun.
Oh, that's super fun. That's great. Well, Paul, thanks so much for being here. I want to thank everyone else. I want to thank Jenny. She dropped another just great comment. Thanks so much, Jenny. Anyone else that's listening, take a look at it. connect up with Paul. Great dude, knows what he's talking about. Been there and done that. And I will be back again next week. We're taking Thursday off this week on the Faces of Business. Yes. And we're not that I'd like to take it off, but I'm going on a little vacation. So I'm happy about
for
that.
You.
Yeah. And we will see you next week on the Faces of Business. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Damon.